Everybody loves somebody sometime. Everybody falls in love somehow. Woo! Ah. Oh! That sometime. And now, ladies and gentlemen, oh, I feel good tonight, but I'm a little tired. My wife kept me awake all night. Poor Jeannie couldn't close her eyes. Just couldn't close her eyes. Finally, figured it out. She put her false eyelashes on backwards. Hey, no, come to think of it, we had a kind of a rough week at my house. Don't split up house. Put a house on one car. House. No, we don't do that no more. We had a power failure at my house. Yeah, my Jeannie lost her voice. And my son Dino. Who sent you over, Jerry? And my son, Dino, he was upset this morning. He spent all of his allowance, didn't even have enough money to buy gasoline for his car. So last night, when he took his girl out for a ride, they had to push the cart to where they usually run out of gas. Now, don't you go away, because there's a fella coming out here to tell you all about the wonderful guest we have on tonight's show.
The Dean Martin Show, starring Paul Anka, Sid Caesar, Morgana King, Bob Newhart, and Les Brown and his band of renown.
Someone for everyone. Somewhere there's a someone for me. Though I may be lonely now, I'll see it through somehow. To someone's heart I know I hold the key. Somewhere there's a someone for everyone. Somewhere there's a someone for me. And I'll search my whole life through until I find a love that's true. For I know somewhere there's a someone for me. Until I find a love that's true. For I know somewhere there's a someone for me. For I know somewhere there's a someone for me. Well, tonight, we're pleased to present the world-famous adventurer, archaeologist, explorer, mountain climber, and engineer, and the author of the best-selling book, 20 Glorious Years Traveling Alone Around the World, and the other book, I Forgot I Was Married. A man who calls every corner of the globe his home. Let us meet Professor Ludwig von Tourist.
How about, there we are. slippery chair.
So,
Well, you go right down.
Professor
Gotta hold on. Yeah.
Von Torres. Now,
Torres, yes.
we are very privileged to have you here.
Mein privilege and mein pleasure. Thank you very much. What would you like to know?
Well, after you seat yourself all proper and everything...
I'm all seated if I just hold my foot on the ground. Otherwise, if I go, I'm down dead.
You are comfortable.
I'm comfortable, but I'm not comfortable.
Oh, would you like to go on with our questioning right now?
Right now.
All right, now, you are known as one of the world's truly great engineers.
That's true, yes.
Oh, well, Professor, what would you say was the most wonderful, magnificent feat of engineering you ever asked to perform?
Well, the biggest difficult feat I've ever asked to perform in engineering was I was asked to go down and straighten out the Leaning Tower of Pisa. You know where that is?
Leaning Tower of Pisa? They want to do that?
That's in Italy, the Leaning Tower of Pisa. When
Yes,
I went down there,
I know
the
that.
tower was leaning like this, you know what I mean? So I wanted to go down, I looked it over, and I said, well, I'd want to get something to pull it up, you know? I don't want to use anything hard, because I'll scratch a pizza, you know what I mean?
Oh.
I don't want to scratch the pizza, so I got to get something soft, but something that could hold.
Oh,
So I got some very heavy horses.
Horses? What's horses?
Horses is a big rope.
Oh, a rope. Oh,
That's right, a big
rope.
rope. For horses, you know. And, horses. You know what horses are. They're ropes. They're big ropes.
I thought there was something you ride
No,
on.
that's a hazard.
That's a hazard, yeah. All right.
Hey, get Haas. Get them over here. Let me get
Oh,
Haas.
yes.
Now, these are big ropes we call horses, and I looked it over and I figured we put around 7,000 horses ropes around this leaning tower piece of it, the leaning side is, and then I figured I got to get something that's going to go day and night, that could go without water for about 6-7 days, some kind of animal, you know?
Oh, yeah. Well, what animal did you find?
Well, we figured on the camel, you know?
Camel.
So we got 7,000 camels. 7,000 camels, and we got the 7,000 ropes from around the leaning tower of Pisa from the ropes, and we tied it around the humps of the camels, you know what I mean? And then at a given signal, I said, all right, go! And they pulled and they strained for one whole week. They were straining and they were pulling and straining for a whole week.
And did you straighten out the Leaning Tower of Pisa?
No, but we straightened out the camels.
Camels are all straightened out.
There wasn't a hump in the carload.
Oh!
All straight. That was some job.
Yeah, imagine. Then, actually, you were not able to straighten out the tower.
Oh, we could have straightened out the tower. I could have straightened out the tower.
Oh.
Well, all I had to do was just tilt Italy. You tilt Italy and you straighten out. You know the boot of Italy, you know where the heel of the boot is?
Yes.
Well, you just jack that up, that's all. And you veg in Sicily, and you got it made.
Well, it doesn't sound logical.
Oh, no, it's not logical because all the water would spill over into France and they wouldn't like that.
Well, it sounds like a very expensive proposition.
Oh, it's so much. It would be over $100, you know? Then you get into big money.
Oh, yeah. Well,
The horses alone are 78 cents.
Yes,
Then you're going to get a cheap horse, you know?
you're also known to have discovered many famous engineering principles. What are some of them?
Well, there's one theory of dynamic that I found, but the theory of the boomerang.
You discovered the boomerang?
Oh, yes. If I discovered the boomerang, and to prove it, they're using it in Australia.
Well, that was a very important
Oh,
discovery.
yeah. In fact, if I didn't invent the boomerang, there would be no Australia, because...
No Australia?
What's Australia without a boomerang, you know what I mean? So, I had invented the boomerang. The boomerang is this. The principle is on this here. All of this I'll show it on a hat. Just a hat, because the theory is X plus snap, and then as the hat goes out...
X plus snap?
X plus snap. You can't understand horses and snap, right? X plus snap. Now, when the horse goes out... When the hat goes out, you got me. When the hat goes out to the point of no return, the hat gets scared. And it starts to come back home. You make a scared hat. Yeah. Now watch, you see, I'm just gonna throw it that way and you'll see it. Now, X plus snap, and you see the hat come around and it comes right back. There it is. You see that? That's all it is.
Could you do that?
Sure, it's right now. Just watch very closely. X plus snap, and it comes right around, and there it is right again. You see that?
That's
it's a simple
hard to
thing.
believe. I don't...
Well, you're seeing it right in front of your eyes. What I'm doing is just X plus snap, and you see it go around, and then, you know, the hat comes right back when I'm...
Now,
How long did wie rehearsed it. I don't understand when something's doing, don't you?
Professor.
Could I have a hat for dignity, please? Just a hat. Thank you very much.
Now, could we go on to something else?
That's the best one you can figure out. Get a nice hat for crying out loud.
You're also known as a world-famous archaeologist.
That's right. I have,
Well, could you tell us if you've ever made any important discoveries in the field of archaeology?
Yes, I was kidding around in the desert one time, you know.
Kidding around?
I was kidding around in the desert. I went there with a pail and shovel, you know. I was looking for sand. And boy, they got a lot of sand in the desert. If you want sand, go to our desert. So I was kidding around with a pail and shovel. You know, I was digging down and digging here and dug it. And all of a sudden, I dug down and found a piece of pottery, you know.
A what?
A piece of pottery.
Pottery.
And then I dug down a little further and I found a piece of crockery. And I didn't know if it was a pot of crockery or cock of pottery. I didn't know what it was, you know. So I looked down and then I said, what could it be? It must be something down there if there's pottery and crockery. So I said, so I got a lot of fellas and we dug down, boy, and we was something, and we unearthed the whole city. But the most beautiful thing that we unearthed was a wall. The most beautiful wall you ever seen. It was all hand-tooled, all handmade, and on the wall, there was hieroglyphics. Hieroglyphics. I couldn't make it out. So I got my interpreter, Yaha.
Yaha was there.
Yaha, he was with the horses in court. And he come over and I said, Yaha, could you read what the hieroglyphics says? He says, sure. He says, the hieroglyphics mean, it says, Yachim Yeshua Chadara Machla, Rahim Achida Setan Machla, Alachidin Roshina Breda Chadara Machlam.
And what did that mean, Professor?
No handball playing against this wall. All right. Give me all the hats. That's it. All the hats. That's it. Take it all down. That's it.
All right, now,
Okay,
that's it.
fine.
Now,
All right, now
Professor,
we got the hats.
you are also known
Yeah.
as a great mountain climber.
That's right. I am a mountain climber.
Now, there is...
That's it.
School dropouts these days. Here's a fellow we can be proud of. He's an amazing talent. He's been a star since he was 15 years old when he wrote and recorded his first hit. It's a pleasure to have him with us tonight, Paul Anka.
Roses for a bloom, lady, Mr. Florist, take this order, please. We had a silly quarrel the other day. Hope these little flowers chase her blues all away. Want some red roses for a blue lady. Send them to the sweetest gal in town. And if they do the trick, I'm gonna hurry back and pick your best white orchid for her wedding gown. Want some red roses for a blue lady. Mr. Florist, take my order, please. We had such a silly quarrel. 'Twas just the other day, and I'm hoping that all these flowers chase her blues away. One red roses for a blue lady. Send them to the sweetest gal in town. do the trick. I'm gonna hurry back and pick your best white orchid for her wedding gown. I'm gonna hurry back and pick right out your best orchid for her gown.
What do you say one more time?
One more time.
I've got some red roses for a blue lady.
What?
Send them to the sweetest gal in town.
And if they do that trick,
Oh yeah,
take it.
I'll hurry back to bed.
Ooh, your best white orchid for her wedding gown. Yeah, your best white orchid for her wedding gown.
Hold that guy. I guess any man who has ever combed his hair and found one or two strands on the comb has thought to himself, I'm going to lose all my hair or I'm going to be bald all my life. And has thought, should I buy a toupee? Now, very often he will make the decision to buy a toupee, or in some cases, his wife will make the decision for him. This is the complaint department of a large department store. Ladies and gentlemen, here is Mr. Bob Newhart.
Howdy.
Do you have a private room of some kind? I'd like to discuss returning a gift.
Oh, well, is it underwear, sir?
No, it isn't. It isn't underwear. See, my wife bought me a toupee for our anniversary, and I'd like to return it.
Well, do you have it with you, sir?
It's under the hat. Yes.
Well, what model is it, sir?
I don't know. I don't know what model it is. It's the crew cut with the widow's peak.
Oh, our Mr. Wonderful model.
Whatever you call it.
Well, could I see the item, sir?
I'll show it to you in just a minute. There's some people coming. Just don't stir me. Just hold it. Have they gone by?
Yeah, yes, they've gone by.
See, there it is. And see, the problem is, I notice people on the street, they start laughing at me as I come towards them, you know.
Well, it certainly makes you look years younger.
Well, thank you very much, sir. But see, they still laugh. And see, we went to this party, and I bent down to put some cheese dip on this cracker, and the toupee fell into the cheese dip. And everyone quit having cheese dip.
Huh?
Maybe a laughing matter to you, sir. It's not. And the hostess started crying, and
Hostess?
and the hostess, yes, and we spent about 2 hours trying to fish it out of the cheese dip. So anyway, I took it home and I put it in our washer dryer, you know, and we have one of those with the windows, you know, and see, there's another problem. See, the kids like to sit and watch it, you know? And
So? They like to watch it go up?
and See, they're mad because I'm returning it. You know?
Now, would you want a full exchange on this?
Well, I'd like a straight man who didn't laugh. No, I don't want the full exchange. What I'd like to get is a real cheap one I could stick in the washer for the kids to watch.
What
Did you know your wife was getting it for you, sir?
Well, I didn't. Well, looking back, of course. See, one morning she came in with this piece of paper and she told me to put my head on it, you know, and she traced my head, but she'd never tell me what it was for, you know.
Well, exactly what is your main complaint?
Well, the main complaint is it doesn't do what, you know, you say it's going to do.
Well, that particular model is guaranteed to stay on in a hurricane.
Well, I know it stays on in a hurricane, but see, we're from Iowa, and you know we really don't get that many hurricanes. You know? See, mainly I want it to stay on when I go down for the cheese dip.
Well, of course, if you wish to exchange it, we'd have to have the price tag.
You're sure you worked with Jerry, huh?
Yeah. But our stuff wasn't this funny, I'll tell you that.
Could I use your phone?
Oh, for heaven's sake, yeah.
Honey, listen, you want to call the Hennessy's and ask them to look and see if there's a price tag in the bottom of the dish?
Do, Henny. Do. All of a sudden my heart sings.
Ray,
Then I remember little things.
me,
Your voice upon the telephone. The
ah,
little laugh that's all your own.
so,
The crazy things you say and do,
ah,
the fun it is to be with you.
See the magic thrill that's in your touch.
do,
Oh, darling, I love you so much. Now you go down.
Ray,
The funny way you hold your head, you go down.
me,
The crazy things you say have been said. Now you go down. You crazy wife. You gotta go down. Don't you understand?
All right,
You can't keep
all right.
on going up.
Enough of the fooling around. I think I can really show you I can sing.
You're gonna sing?
You're gonna sing. Correva mandando tu cavato di vina marrutivando, capita ragazza, merlo lo vedi mangiare l'altra, rassoluto lela, in meglio lo di bagno, il cappello rafatto, un rasolloro giallo coratte la talla, mento bella, oh mento, presto per la tragedia, addio, 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 ragione la faccia bene, We're singing rain, what a glorious feeling, we're happy again, we'll laugh at clouds, the rock up above, the sun's in my heart, and I'm ready for love, that the stormy clouds chase everyone from the place, come on with that rain there, the smile on my face, we'll walk down a lane with a happy refrain, just singing. Hey, the rain.
Meantime, you keep all them cards and letters coming in, folks. Oh, heavens to Betsy. You do write such beautiful things to us. Every morning when the mailman comes, my Jeannie and I, we go out in the garden and read them aloud. We read them in the garden on account of we cry so much it helps water the flowers. And you've all been so nice to us, my Jeannie and me. We're going to send each and every one of you a little token of our affection, a nice picture of Les Brown and his band. Oh, it may not look like much at first, but you're going to have a lot of fun with it. All you have to do is light a match and rotate it slowly under the picture, and oh, what a sight you're in for. Now, you keep rotating that match under the picture long enough, and do you know what you're going to see? You're going to see the picture catch fire. That's what you're going to see. Now, you take care of yourselves till we get together again next week. So, good night. Everybody loves somebody sometime. Well, I'm going to leave you.